Little bit of a hiccup this morning. The slide in the back doesn't want to come in, so we gotta do some.
One of the motors got unplugged.
One of the motors is unplugged.
Slides. You either love them or you hate them. When all four slides are out, we have tons of room inside. But when we're packing up, getting ready to go, and one of the slides doesn't want to come in, yeah, you start to hate them then. And we've had our coach for several years now, and we've had at least 5 separate times when the slides didn't work. So we thought we'd go through when slides don't work, what we did to solve those, and some of the troubleshooting tips that we've learned along the way to help you troubleshoot when slides just don't want to behave just right. I'm Steve.
I'm Nancy. And together with Mars, the blind Sheltie,
And Phoebe, the warrior princess.
we are living our dream.
Our goal is to travel the US and Canada in our 2016 Tiffin Open Road,
while spreading the messages taught to us by our pets.
keep smiling.
And be kind.
Join us on our travels by subscribing to our channel as we continue our great adventure.
And don't forget to leave us a comment to let us know how we are doing.
In the spring of 2023, we stayed one night at a harvest host near Little Rock, Arkansas. It was an historic site that was once an orphanage, but now hosts a small farm and store along with tours of the building. On the morning we were set to leave, one of our slide motors on our Schwintek slides came loose and started grinding gears, as you saw.
So we are inside trying to connect the motor. The motor came disconnected, the wire, and it's kind of crimped in there.
Okay.
So Steve is trying to put it together.
You're coming in.
I know.
Try to go out. Until they get in sync. Keep going out.
I'm holding it and it's doing nothing.
Okay. Try to come in now.
It's not working. Okay, so we had a little bit of success. We're gonna bring it in?
Yep.
Okay. Nope, it's off a track
Okay.
or something.
This thing has come loose.
Let's see if I can show you what's going on here. Okay, that's what we had, was unplugged. This is all torn up too now. This is the motor right here. And that motor is not supposed to move this way or that.
Watch it while I try.
So, yeah, go ahead. Whoa, 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 whoa.
At this point, we realized something was wrong. Now, we were not aware of the set screw at the time, so we called a mobile RV tech, and later we found the gears were stripped because the motor had come loose. So we got delayed about 4 hours. One of our slides didn't come in. We couldn't get it finagled. Called a mobile RV tech who was able to get out here within an hour, which is great. Found out a couple of set screws on the slide motor had come loose. So we had to manually bring the slide in. We're bracing it so we can hit the road, and we'll take it in for repairs when we get back to New Hampshire. Now, this rear slide is the one we had issues with in Arkansas that you saw. But before that, about a year after we bought the coach, we actually were having problems with it. It was making noise, it didn't operate smoothly. When we took it in, the technician said that the rail system was not installed completely correctly. So they ordered a brand new rail system. It was still Schwintek, they replaced it. However, a year later, the motor started coming a little bit loose and started tearing up the gears again. So once again, because the motor wasn't held in place with a bolt, it was simply held in place with a pin, which is what the Schwintek slides are done. It came loose and it started tearing up the slides because the slide mechanism itself was not all that beefy. So at that point, after 2 Schwintek slides failed on us on this slide, we decided to replace it with what's called a Vroom slide rail system. So what did we like about the Vroom system? Well, first, it's bolted in, instead of using set screws, so the motor is not likely to jump loose. And the system was designed to take much more force and be more resilient. However, the vroom slides are very popular and difficult to schedule. The main plant is in Arizona, but there are a few authorized installers, and we found Connecticut Motor Cars and Coaches in Bristol, Connecticut. The only problem was it took 6 months to get the parts and schedule an install. So we were without this one slide for 6 months. Now you can look up about vroom slides. Basically, a person owned the exact same floor plan that we did, and he had this exact same slide that he was having issues with. Because he was an engineer, he designed this system to be much beefier. And we've gone with this system, and it's been working out really, really well ever since then. Now, it uses the same motor and the same slide controller, but the motor is bolted in place. It's not just held in with a pin. So we've had no mechanical issues whatsoever with the slide since we've replaced it. Now this slide is what caused our next slide issue. It's a hydraulic slide. So we've got 2 electric slides in the back and 2 hydraulic slides in the front. What was happening with this slide was we were in Atlanta, and after several times it just wouldn't come in all the time. So we'd start up the engines and the engine, put the park brake on and have all of that set, and the electric slides came in, but this slide would start to move and then stop. So we thought it was something with the hydraulics. What I would do is, there are valves on the hydraulics where you can release and set pressure, and I'd pop that a little bit and then the slide would work. I thought it was hydraulic related. But when we were in Red Bay, Alabama, we took the coach in to the Tiffin Mechanical Bay. So it's 5:45 in the morning, and we are coming into Red Bay service area. Sun's not even peeking over the horizon yet, and all the buses are lining up to get in their bays. We're in the mechanical bay today to get our hydraulics worked on. Bay 43 near the end. And they looked at the hydraulic system and found out it was simply a loose ground. So again, even though it's hydraulic, it was the electronics of the hydraulic system, the loose ground, that meant the signal wasn't getting to the hydraulic motor, so it wouldn't be powering this to go in. And that actually talks to our next system, because one time we were using the panel on the inside, we'd push it and nothing would happen. Come to find out, some of the other slides on the other panel were working, so we thought it was related to the panel. And I remembered we had recently had some work done with the wiring behind the control panel, so I simply checked behind the control panel, and it was the network cable from the control panel to the Spider controller that had come loose. Simply plug that back in, control panel worked, slide worked. So sometimes it's not the slide itself. Sometimes it's simply the control panel on your wall that's trying to get the signal to the Spider system. So it's that central control system for Tiffins anyway, and in other coaches it'll be that control system that controls the electronics for the signal even getting there. So on Tiffins they have what's called a Spider control system. So this is what's called the DC load center, and you've got your panels on the wall. So when I press one of these lights, if you look at the LED lights at the bottom, you'll see they come on. There, 103, 104 goes on, 104 goes off, 104 goes on. That's because you press this and the light goes on. So that's one of the first steps you can do in troubleshooting is your signal getting from the wall panel to the central control system. Now newer Tiffins, they have obviously the digital panel here, the screen that's a little different, but the concepts are the same. The back of this panel is actually connected with a network cable, and sometimes that network cable can come loose from either side, and you need to go ahead and check that. One time we had a panel that was going faulty, and we unplugged the panel and plugged it into a different location where a different panel was, and the panel was still not working. So that was showing us that it was definitely the network connection, or the panel, that was bad, and not the network connection at that point. So is your signal getting from, when you say passenger slide retract, to the load center? It's the first thing to check. So the next place to check, if you know the signal is getting to the control panel and the controller, is the signal getting all the way to the slide controller. So this is an electronic slide controller. It's going to be completely different for the hydraulic slides, because are the electronics getting to the hydraulic slides? There's a whole lot of troubleshooting, and you can look up on the Schwintek slide controllers. It's actually made by Lippert, because Lippert has purchased Schwintek now. So there's first of all power, and there's is the power getting to it. Now this is an example. If you don't have your parking brake on, there's a solenoid that power will not get to the slide controller, hence your slides won't work. So you got to make sure the engine is on and the parking brake is on. We actually had an issue where both of those were done and the slide still wouldn't work, and there wasn't power getting to the slide controller. There happened to be a solenoid switch on one of the Spider controllers that we had to switch out. So the first time we ever visited Red Bay, that was just an intermittent issue. The stairs wouldn't work, the slides wouldn't work every now and then, but then sometimes they would. By having that module replaced, that was fixed. So after you've tested that, oftentimes you'll see an error code, and there's a whole series of troubleshooting about how to do the error code. But what you can do, there's a button in here to reset the error code, and a lot of times that makes it go away. But then you have to read the error code. Is it motor number 1 or motor number 2? And by deciding which motor it is, one of the troubleshooting steps that that we had done when we were outside of Savannah, Georgia, was he simply switched the wires from motor 1 to motor 2, and the error code still showed motor 1. It showed motor 1 before we switched the wires and motor 1 after we switched the wires. That told us the problem wasn't with the wiring that goes to the motors, or it wasn't with the motor itself, it was actually with the controller.
Yeah, so you got 14 volts there. It's definitely giving you a fault code for motor 1, short to ground. So yeah, we're just gonna see if it's in the motor or if it's in the harness.
Oh, okay. Good.
Okay, by switching.
So you're just switching them?
Yeah, yeah. Because you can hear the controller trying to click and trying to run it out.
Yeah.
But it's not doing anything. No. And there's no way to get it out because they make a way to get them in. Yeah. So you're not stuck, but there's not a way to take them out.
Now that's why I bought a spare controller. So I always carry a spare controller with me now, as well as a spare wire. Because by troubleshooting the controller, once you know the signal is getting here, is there a short or a problem with the wiring to the controller to the motor? Is there a problem in the motor? Or is there a problem in the controller? And these are ways that I can help troubleshoot all of those issues to diagnose which of those might need to be replaced. In our case, the error actually ended up going away after a while, and I haven't had to replace the slide controller yet, but I'm ready when it comes back. So in summary, I thought I'd go through some of the troubleshooting tips. Well, the first thing is I learned a lot of these troubleshooting tips. Tiffin, about 5 years ago, were releasing some videos on the Spider control system, on how to manually override electric slides, how to retract your leveling jacks, and even one on how to retract your hydraulic slides. So you can learn a lot from some of these older videos if you have an older coach. And I'm sure a lot of those still apply to even some of the newer coaches because they're still using the Spider system. It's just a little bit different. But really, it's all about what are those systems? Well, there's first the wall panels, and you need to know that the wall panel is working right. And then from the wall panel, it goes to the load center, as we've shown you. But there's also a panel underneath that's a fuse panel for the part of the Spider system. And that's where there are certain controls for the ignition controller that ends up sending the power to the slide controllers if the ignition is turned on, if the park brake is on, etc. So you've also got to troubleshoot that sometimes. And then finally, there is the slide controller itself. So those are the primary components that are going to be on your system. We have two slide controllers, two electronic slide controllers. Those are in the rear of the system. And then the hydraulics are obviously controlled by the HWH system. So one of the first things you can check is it getting to the Spider central control panel? And they have the LED lights, and as you can see here, the bedroom slide, the passenger slide, the vanity slide, and the driver's front slide, all of those show which LED lights to look for. So that's how I can tell if the wall panel is working correctly. Then there's the fuse panel underneath it. And the one issue we had with this panel underneath it was these park relays, the park brake relay, the ignition relay, that module had to be changed out by Bay Diesel. That's what needs to be replaced, the whole board.
CVC Spider 3 relay.
Because we were having problems with the slides and or the steps not working periodically because the ignition solenoid was not tripping. Now, on your slide controller, it is a Schwintek slide controller, but Schwintek was bought out by Lippert. So if you want to get a replacement controller, you look for the Lippert slide controller. As a matter of fact, I found that there were a lot of third-party slide controllers, so I specifically wanted to make sure I got the Lippert slide controller. Now, two of the things that you can check on that are the power inputs, and that's where you can make sure that there is 12 volts getting to that slide controller when you're pressing it. And the second thing is the motor connectors, and by disconnecting or connecting the motor connectors, you can do a little bit of troubleshooting as well. But also, if there is a fault, if you have the lights blinking a couple of times, so one time for motor 1, twice for motor 2, and then the red light blinking either 2, 3, 4, whatever those different error codes are, you can find that you will have a fault. So for example, we had the fault of 9 on motor 1. So that's where we started our troubleshooting issues. To reset the error code and try again, just to see if it's just an intermittent error, you can press the button 6 times and then hold it down on the 7th press until the lights start flashing. Now the button is inside that little slot on the slide controller. And if it's difficult to get to, there's simply 4 screws holding on the case for the controller. You can take those off and more easily access that button to reset the error. Now, if the error doesn't come back, it's an intermittent error, and just watch again until it might come back again. So resetting the error code sometimes actually just makes it go away. So what are those troubleshooting steps? First, push the wall switch. Make sure that you're getting your signal to your control panel. After that, you might need to double check the solenoid is power getting to the slide controller. If it's not getting to the slide controller, it could be that solenoid that's in the panel underneath your bay. If the power does get to the slide controller, then you want to check for any error codes on the slide controller, because then that can help you troubleshoot, is it motor 1 or motor 2, because those slides have 2 motors, one on each side. And then after that, well, check to see if there's mechanical issues with the slide. So I hope this really short summary of the troubleshooting steps that we've learned to use over time can help you troubleshoot those slides. Leave us comments if you've had issues with slides and what you've been able to do with those. But in the meantime, keep smiling and be kind. Safe travels, everybody.